Have no fear, Hippie here is here with the lovely Virgo Queen. You cannot see her, but she's here. That's your cue to say something.
My mic is not working half the
Uh,
time.
well, I think we'll be good. We should have it worked out. So our next video we're gonna be watching is about Azhymovs. Um, it's his most popular video. All 24 killers ranked from least to most evil. So let's watch.
Hey
I feel like
everyone,
that could
today we're
change
looking at the
though. It
evilest
depends on
killers
how you
of
play
Dead by
them.
Daylight, or the equally not so evil
I
ones. I'll be
believe
putting all
he's
the
doing it
killers into
based off
one
of
of
lore
four
more than
tiers. The
anything.
first tier is the literally should not be killers tier, we then have the misguided, manipulated or confused tier, then the bad people with some humanity tier, and finally the horrendous and irredeemable tier for the killers who deserve to be in the deepest depths of hell. Okay, so going into the first tier of literally should not be killers. First off we have the Spirit. Spirit is possibly the least deserving of her role as a killer. She is literally just a normal person with a bad family history of anger. She's studying at college, trying to do well, but it's hard for her father to keep up college payments, so he breaks and cuts her to pieces and kicks her out of a window. The closest thing we get to Rin becoming a killer-esque is when two bullies approach her in the street. They attack her, and this time she decides to fight back, letting out some inner rage and channeling her ancestors. But yeah, I really don't think Rin should realistically be classified as a killer by any means, at least prior to her time in
It's
the
kind of
entity's realm. For the
strange.
killer
She
roster, she
feels
is
very
by far the
manipulated
closest we
into
get to
it.
just a regular person. Next up, we have the twins. The twins are also very innocent.
They're like
However, the
Shrek.
twins, despite their overwhelming innocence, do still kill a decent amount of people in attempts of survival. Although all
Hey,
of
they
these are
weren't
done in
important people.
self-defense with no other option available, as they are literally being hunted down for their entire lives since birth. And why? Well, because of the fact that they were conjoined at birth. It was considered that there was some kind of witchcraft involved. As a consequence, their mother was burned in front of them and left them to defend themselves as just children. They were then captured and experimented on by a creepy cult. Victor then died, leaving Charlotte alone for what was likely about a decade, and through all this time, the only time they killed was when they had to, because they were being constantly hunted. If they could have chosen to be left alone, they would have. It's really sad, to be honest. Next up, we have the Hag. The only reason Hag is slightly higher than the other two is because she did make a conscious choice to use the hexes and magic, where some of the others simply had things imposed upon them. She did not deserve it by any means, but despite seeing what it did to her friend, she continued using them. Lisa is a person who was kidnapped and tortured and basically eaten alive, and she only killed when she finally managed to break free of her chains, after pleading the entity to free her, to then exact revenge upon the people that kidnapped her. She was dealt a rough hand with where she was born in a creepy secluded village surrounded by magic, so the extent to which it's her fault is debatable. Plague is one of the more innocent characters on the killer roster who is actually more of a savior if anything. After Babylon, Adiris' home city gets overrun by a deadly plague. Adiris
I
does
do
all
like
she
her
can to
lore.
help her people, even cutting off her toe to try and save a woman from the plague, as an offering to the gods. She makes a final push by banishing herself from her own city to try and protect her people. In her dying breath, she begs the gods to save her people, seemingly in return for her giving herself up to them. Plague does a few human sacrifices, but you have to remember that she was living in an entirely different time, where that kind of thing was actually seen as quite positive. She does also kill her mentor Haban, but this kind of comes under the same thing of it being seen as a thing that needed to happen for the city to be saved. Although we could probably technically count that as a proper kill. Philip is one of the most tragic characters in Dead by Daylight, as the guy is actively trying to avoid violence and death, but it always seems to seek him out and find
Always
him,
love
so
you,
much so
Philip.
that he eventually breaks. The first time he kills is after a group of men during a war mutilate and kill his mentor, leaving her for dead.
I really want
Also
Rafe to
killed during this
become
war.
like a
The
playable
second time is upon
survivor.
discovery that his boss has been secretly getting him to crush people to death in the compactor at Autohaven Wreckers. However, he never wanted to do any of these things. He only does kill when he's really pushed to the limit of trauma. Evil found him despite him always wanting to avoid it. He's just a bit high here because he does have an option to not kill these people. Nurse is a tricky one because in her tome lore she's kind of horrendous and honestly pretty irredeemable, hating people simply for being weak and sick. The thing is, many have disputed the tome lore, stating that it completely contradicts everything we know about the nurse prior. She seemed caring and put in a rough situation after her husband dies. She can barely survive off the money she earns at Crotus Pren, only breaking after being subjected to 2 decades of work at the asylum. Even when in the realm, films, she is shown to care, and according to the devs, she was mentioned to be one of the most human killers. So personally, I think she just about makes it here. Okay, now we're into the misguided,
reach home
manipulated,
lore.
or confused here. Both Susie and Joey are here from the Legion as two characters who do some bad stuff, sure, but are only
What
pushed
do you
over
think
the
of
edge
their
by
lore,
Legion's
babe?
leader Frank. At the moment of the Legion's
Well,
first kill, they are heavily
What?
resistant to doing the
I
kill,
don't know
and
the
appear
lore,
scared
so.
that Frank has stabbed someone, as you would be. These two are greatly misguided and confused and
They
impressionable
were
as young
angsty
people. I don't think they
teenagers,
are
and then
completely
they
innocent though, as after this they do follow up
off
with the
the
cover-up of
cashier.
evidence and don't show any restraint afterwards to Frank getting them to
That's
stab the
about
store
it.
clerk. Also, they're shown to commit a bunch of crimes throughout the lore too, and they seemingly have very little remorse. Trapper is here, but very debatably so, as he is still kind of a mass murderer, which you know is a little hard to defend for the case of him not being a killer, but from reading the lore it is quite evident that Trapper was greatly manipulated by the entity, and due to the entity's great power, there was very little he could do to actually resist it. Despite this, we know that Trapper did try and resist
Yeah,
the
I think
entity
he
even
actually
when
started
in its
receiving
realm.
like
As a child, Evan
hallucinations.
is kind and caring and is heavily opposed to his father's mistreatment of the Macmillan workers. His father appears to frame him for beating a worker, and the entity seems to greatly corrupt Evan's mind. He's not innocent, but I also don't think he's anywhere close to being evil. If the corruption was not there, then Evan would not be a killer probably. However, I'm putting him just up here due to just how high his kill count is, to be honest. Okay, so now we have Bubba. I'll be honest, it feels a little weird to put a character who literally eats humans this low, but Bubba seemingly just really doesn't know what's going on. He's abused at his household and forced to kill, which he quite clearly hates
Yeah,
doing,
he's more
all
like
under the
an
guise
animal
of it
than
being a
anything
needed
else.
thing to defend his home. It doesn't make it right, but he also seems to not know any better and kills to please his family members. Killing appears to scare him and make him feel incredibly
sad.
guilty. I would put him lower, but I mean he still kind of kills and eats people, so, you know. Deathslinger is a weird
Yeah,
one because by
that's
the
a sad
sounds of his
story
name,
with
he sounds like
Leatherface.
he'd be one of the more irredeemable characters, but really he's not so
I
bad.
always thought his
Despite
movie
name,
was
he's only
sad.
killed 4
I'm just-
confirmed people,
Yeah.
and even then his kills are more
I
excusable
do too,
being from
because
the
it
American
really
Midwest
does
in
seem
the
like
late to
something that
mid-1800s, where things were generally a little more wild
it
and
has
lawless than they are
happened
now.
and
The only thing that Caleb
really
can be
has
condemned for is his
happened.
creation of the spear gun,
But
which on
again,
first use
it's
tears a
just
man's intestines out.
terrible,
However,
terrible.
it's mentioned that this was not meant to happen and was just a design flaw, as he later perfects the weapon to capture people
Hey, now I'm
alive.
kinda
Caleb
sad
is
about
corrupt,
Bubba.
but he gets to the situation he's in because of those more corrupt than him abusing his intelligence and selling on
Okay.
his patents. As things go for these killers, Caleb is actually one of the
Think
more
of how
reasonable
happy,
ones, as strange as
Deathslinger
that
is.
sounds. Anna is a lot like Bubba
He's
in
a
the sense
bounty
that she has a
hunter.
childlike mind and she doesn't really understand the extent of violence that she's committing, but doing it out of a need to protect herself. However, she does still kill a lot of people who come through her woods, and she does steal children from nearby villages as she thinks she's protecting them, but instead doesn't think to feed them, which means they starve to death. There's only so much of an extent to which you can argue ignorance for her doing bad things. However,
Pretty
I still want to
important
put her in this
step.
tier, as in a way, I think
Yeah,
it's like
I
blaming an
mean,
animal for
I would
acting its
kind of
own
wonder
nature
why
to
she
protect its
doesn't
territory,
think
which, as we
that
know,
they
Huntress is very
need
territorial
food.
and wolf or bear-like, even described in her lore.
Like, she
Okay, now
herself
onto the
has to
bad
eat
people with some
food.
humanity tier. Billy is a hard one to put here,
And
to be
even,
honest,
like,
as he has a
animals
very
kinda
sad
have
story where
the-
he's abused and used. But the thing that
the
takes me over the
sense
edge
to
and makes me
feed
put him here is the
other
fact that he clearly
animals.
has a high degree of enjoyment when it comes to killing. He says he enjoys holding the mushed up brains of a police deputy in his hands, and he does some pretty messed up stuff like chuck a live person into a pig pen to be eaten alive. The guy he chucks to the pigs is horrible, but that's still a horrendous thing to do to another person. However, the motives for him to be this way are there, as he's abused by his parents all his life, kept in a lightless room and treated worse than the animals of Coldwin Farm. His story is sad, but there's tragedy also in that his conditioning to be this way seemed to have changed him now to be a killer by nature, even if he wasn't originally. Amanda Young has a pretty traumatic time. As a recovering drug addict, she is forced into Jigsaw's trials, which she survives, and later seems to think of them as a good thing that saved her and made her value her life more. She then joins Kramer to help him with the trials. She then starts rigging the trials to be unfair, making them so there's no redemption to them and no way of escape. This contradiction to what saved her seems kind of evil. She was turned around by this event, but she seems to want to simply torture others. I think she definitely does have redeeming factors though, and her story is one of tragedy even if she goes off the rails closer to the end and the point of her death. Julie and Frank of the Legion are both very messed up people with incredibly dodgy morals. They are only
Oh, I
really here
didn't
because they
realize
aren't
he's
shown to
doing
be
the
complete
Legion of
psychopaths as they formed the
separate.
Legion to begin with. It could be argued that they exploit the innocence of Susie and Joey, but it seems from their lore they are actually friends. Their kill count is not high, but their desire to be murderers and criminals displays how bad they really are. They have these big discussions in the lore about their favorite killers and stuff like that. They're super weird and they have this strange superiority complex to them. Their only humanity and redemption, I would say, is their camaraderie with each other in the Legion. Blight is a weird one, to be honest, and it's kinda hard to tell whether he's bad or just like very unaware of the amount of bad stuff that he spreads through the world. During the Opium War, he experiments on prisoners and attempts to make a super soldier serum basically, to try and allow people to withstand pain. So this is pretty bad, but then he is seemingly unaware of the many people that his serum has killed unknowingly to him. It's seemingly hundreds or thousands. This, I think, makes him bad, just for the fact that he's done experiments on humans, but it's this point where he clearly shows remorse and he's shocked by the horrors that he's created. So I think there is something in him that is definitely human, as after this event he attempts to turn his life around and experiment in other ways. So partly misguided, but I think for what he did, he's still pretty evil. Although Oni is the most prolific murderer in the game, the reason why he isn't number one is because although he's a horrendous person, he still has some sort of motive for his killing. However bad that motive is, he has somewhat of a reason in wanting to protect his legacy and the legacy of the samurai. He's not just outright killing because he enjoys it. He gets carried away, sure. His motives are bad ones, but there is still more of a reason than simply wanting to kill. Further, upon killing his own
I feel
father,
like he's the
quite clearly a
closest
moment
thing
where
we
he
have
shows
in the
emotion
game
and
to a
remorse,
soldier.
before realizing himself that he is too far gone and must finish what he started. Okay, now we're moving on to those who are
Why is it not
horrendous and
working?
irredeemable. Demo is
I
the
don't
lowest
know, you
in his
gotta
tier
have
as a
your mic
character who is just
closer.
kind of a mindless killer
It's
following orders. It's a
closer
creature
to
built
it.
for the sole purpose of death, which its huge claws, thousands of teeth,
I do wish
and
we had
ability
like
to
an
resist
actual
most
like
form of human attack
World
kind
War
of
One or World War
exemplifies.
Two
It's built for
soldier in
death,
the
and so it
game.
is irredeemable as it doesn't really have a personality nor redeeming qualities, as it's inhuman and built for the purpose of death and the destruction of worlds. Not much else to say. As a bioweapon built for killing, he's
I
not
want
exactly
like
in a good place when it comes to redemption. Nemesis, I consider putting him
you
lower
know,
as a
I feel
killer who
like
was
it'd be
programmed to
really
do what he
cool
does,
if
but I
you
think we should
had
just look at him as he is
maybe a
currently.
World
In that
War
regard,
One
a
or
lot
World
like the
War
demo,
Two
he's just a
character. He could
machine
shoot
built for killing.
flames
But I
onto
think he
the
is slightly
ground
higher in
and
the demo, as in Resident
then
Evil
you
3, he
couldn't
does
go
seem
through it
prepared
like
to
it was a
enjoy
big
hunting
wall.
Jill.
That'd be
There are many
cool.
parts in the game when he could have easily killed her, but he instead decides to toy with her, chucking her around and playing with his food, which definitely makes him more sadistic than something that is just built for destruction. He also appears to get enjoyment out of the different weapons he uses, such as a rocket launcher and flamethrower. It's hard to put him higher though, as he's literally programmed this way. Pyramid Head is a little bit like Demo and Nemesis, also in the sense that he's for the purpose of causing pain and built to be a killer. However, I think with Pyramid Head there's more of an intent and more evil within, stating in his lore that he's a sadistic and merciless executioner who is fixated on dispensing punishment through pain. Where Demo is more about efficient killing, Pyramid Head is built for a more pain-inducing method. Despite this, he still lacks a great degree of personality and acts as a means to punish others. He's not doing it on
I
his
didn't
own
think he
volition, as
enjoyed
when
it at
he is
all.
done
I
with
just
torturing
thought
someone,
he was
goes
doing it
into
because
something
it's part
called
of
the
his
long
job.
rest until he is needed again. So unlike other killers, he sees this as more of a duty, even if he is very sadistic and arguably evil. Ghosty is someone who in his lore kills meticulously and methodically, staying undetected and moving from town to town in
It's
order
a
to continue
ghosty
killing. He
though.
clearly enjoys what he does, as seen in this Mori. Further in the lore, he writes in the newspaper about his own
Who doesn't
murders
love
and creates somewhat of
Ghosty?
a narrative around his own identity as the Ghostface Killer. This game he plays around killing people and just how precise he is makes him quite simply irredeemable when you see how much he likes doing what he
He's
does.
good, but he ain't
Based
no
on
Chucky.
Clown's lore, he is quite clearly a psychopath with very little value placed on life of any kind. He begins by killing animals and then people, claiming trophies as he does. He falls into drugs, drinking and junk food and continues killing whilst with the traveling circus, claiming fingers as he does, choosing them based on which tastes the best.
I do
which,
wish
is
like
kinda
he
gross.
had an
This guy is
add-on that would
horrible
just
and disgusting, and there is
ridiculously
simply no
increase his
redemption
yellow
to him.
ball
The Trickster is a
speed.
lot like Ghostface in the way that he's just very sadistic and seems to greatly enjoy killing people. What makes Trickster worse though, I think, is that he not only tortures and kills people, but he then goes and makes music out of their screams too. Later in his lore, he then creates a whole performance with lots of people's screams, seeming incredibly happy whilst doing so.
Who
You can
do
see
you
this
think's
in-game
more
with his constant
sadistic,
little comments and
Trickster
laughs when
or
throwing his knives. With someone in
Clown?
his position of power and fame, it makes it even more scary that he is so messed up and
Clown is
the way
just
he
gross.
Freddy, before getting killed, worked
Clown
at a
like
primary
cuts
school
off
where he abused children and did
fingers
lots of other
and
disgusting disgusting things. He then
like
goes on
just
to murder a bunch
mutilates
of them
because
when
he
they're older
enjoys
just
it.
because he's an awful and
Twister,
irredeemable
he
person. There's really not
tortures
much to say about
people to
Freddy.
get
He
their
torments people in their dreams
screams
and terrifies them in
and make it
directed
on
and
his
personal
#1
ways. Yeah, this guy is
platinum
horrible and
sell
definitely one of the worst
album.
in the game. Doctor is a horrendous person who commits dreadful acts,
I
experimenting
feel
on
like it would
people in
be
truly
Twister, because
grotesque
Twister
ways,
is
and
also trying to
experimenting
like
into
make money
electroshock
off of them
therapy in
too.
very messed up ways, often causing
Yeah,
tremendous amounts of pain. Doctor is like Blight,
but
except without that remorse. If you look
Clown
at any of his
enjoys it.
cutscenes, you can see that he greatly enjoys his messed up
I
experiments,
I, I
also
think
evident in
Twister
game by his
enjoys
constant
it
laughter.
too, quite a
Myers
bit.
is kind of hard to dispute as the most evil killer, as he is literally defined as such. Stated to be
They're
purely
both
and
evil,
simply
but I feel
evil
like
by
Twister
Dr.
is actually
Loomis,
more
who
evil
studies
than
him for over a
Clown.
decade. It's kinda hard to argue otherwise. As soon as he escapes prison, he literally goes right back to killing, doing it efficiently and without a shred of remorse. In a way, he's more menacing than Doctor, as his kills are done without the motive of experimentation, but simply his motive being the need and desire to kill. Not as a job, but more so it being that he simply does because he's evil. Alright, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know how you'd rank these
I don't
characters.
know how they get killed. He just
And
walks to you.
Yeah.
He just
Okay.
walks slowly and slowly.
Slowly and
At
slowly.
least, like, you're not even getting chased. Like, you are getting chased, but you're not getting ran after.
Okay. So, well, what you think of that video, baby?
It's interesting because I didn't know any of the lore at all for any of them, unless
Yeah.
they were like Ghostface or Michael Myers. But
Yeah. It was made like 3 years ago. So, how many views do you think that video has?
500,000,
Uh, a little higher.
700,
A little higher.
900
A little higher.
mil,
A little higher.
2 mil,
A little lower.
1.5 mil.
A little higher.
Oh my gosh, 1.75 mil.
A little higher.
What, 1.9?
Yeah, yeah, 1.9 million.
Jeez.
Yeah, that had a lot of views. I'm kind of surprised, but I
I'm
feel like it's because
impressed.
he's one of the few who actually does like lore videos. I've always like enjoyed watching his lore videos, and it's a nice list. I can see what got quite a bit of views. Okay, so make sure you give him a like and follow. On to our next video.